The first slivers of dawn painted the vast Serengeti in hues of rose and gold, promising another day of life in relentless hunt. But for Zola, the morning brought only a stark, silent horror. Beneath the sparse shade of an acacia tree, where yesterday her world had pulsed with vibrant, playful energy, lay her three precious cubs, lifeless. Their small forms were crumpled, still, a cruel mockery of slumber. Nearby, a shadow detached itself from the gloom. Jabari, the new male in the pride, stood sentinel, a dark silhouette against the rising sun. A smear of crimson stained his muzzle, a stark confession. His yellow eyes, usually burning with territorial fire, were now eerily cold, calculating, devoid of remorse. The silence from him was a heavier blow than any roar. A guttural sound tore from Zola's throat, not a growl, but a primal shriek of pure anguish that clawed at the morning air. It vibrated across the awakening plains, a sound of absolute, unendurable loss. Her maternal heart, a furnace of fierce devotion just hours ago, had been utterly annihilated, leaving only a hollow, echoing void. For 3 agonizing days, Zola remained by their side, a sentinel of grief. The world blurred around her, the relentless sun, the distant calls of other predators, the gentle breeze that ruffled the dry grasses, all meaningless. She refused to eat or drink, her body slowly wasting, but the heaviest burden was the burning ache in her teats, engorged with milk for cubs who would never nurse. Each throb was a fresh stab of pain, a reminder of what she had lost. 20 miles away, in a parallel tragedy unfolding beneath the same vast sky, Nima the zebra mare and her 3-week-old foal, Quito, journeyed with the immense thundering migration. The air vibrated with the collective rhythm of hooves, a fragile promise of safety in numbers. But dawn brought a new terror. A pack of 12 hyenas, lean and relentless, emerged from the pre-dawn shadows, their cackles chilling the air. Nima, driven by a love as fierce as Zola's, fought with desperate ferocity, her powerful hind legs a blur of lethal defense. She screamed, kicked, and charged, a vision of maternal rage against the encroaching tide of teeth and hunger. But the numbers were overwhelming. Eventually, inevitably, she succumbed, her strength ebbing with her blood. With her final gasping breath, as the hyenas closed in for the kill, Nima summoned one last surge of energy. She lunged, not at an attacker, but into her foal, pushing Quito away with a desperate shove, a final act of sacrificial love. The force sent him stumbling, sprawling, away from the carnage, leaving him alone and terrified, the scent of fresh blood and death forever imprinted on his young mind. Quito, a tiny, fragile shadow, wandered aimlessly for 2 days. His legs, designed for flight, were weak with dehydration and hunger. His small body trembled with exhaustion, his cries soft, pathetic squeaks carried on the wind. Above him, a grim ballet unfolded, the circling vultures, patient and predatory, awaiting the inevitable. Zola, her throat raw, her muscles screaming for sustenance, was finally drawn by desperate thirst towards a small, stagnant waterhole. Her senses, dulled by grief, sharpened slightly as an unfamiliar scent pricked her nose, something out of place in the natural symphony of the plains. Near the waterhole, Zola's sensitive nose also detected an unusual acrid chemical odor, subtly metallic and sharp, distinct from the familiar scent of natural decay or animal waste. It emanated from a small, oddly discolored patch of earth nearby, where the dust seemed to cling unnaturally, dulling the vibrant ochre. It was a fleeting, almost imperceptible detail, but her instincts, honed by a lifetime of survival, registered it as an anomaly. Then she saw him, Quito, collapsed by the water's edge, barely breathing, a tiny mound of black and white surrounded by the patient, predatory circle of vultures, their dark wings beginning their descent. It was a poignant, unbearable echo of her own recent loss. The same vultures, the same stillness. Every predatory instinct screamed prey. A weak, defenseless foal was an easy meal, a simple solution to her hunger, a natural order. But Quito's small, trembling body, his ragged breath, and the soft, almost inaudible whimpers that escaped his parched throat, triggered a profound, agonizing internal conflict within Zola. His distress calls, faint and desperate, were hauntingly similar to the pathetic cries of her lost cubs in her memory before the silence. It was a sound that seemed to override millions of years of predatory programming, a direct assault on the raw, open wound of her maternal heart. Zola stood motionless, frozen in the stark sunlight, locked in a silent, savage battle between instinct and an emerging, inexplicable compassion for the vulnerable foal. Her amber eyes, usually burning with predatory fire, were now clouded with a deep, impossible recognition. This creature, it is small, so helpless. Like them, Zola thought, her gaze fixed on Quito, her powerful body tense with the profound, impossible choice that suddenly lay before her. Zola stared unmoving at the small, quivering form of Quito. The sun beat down, intensifying the conflicting instincts warring violently within her. Her stomach growled, a deep, empty ache, and every fiber of her being screamed for the quick, decisive act of a predator. Yet the small, pitiful whimper Quito made, a faint echo of her own lost cubs, held her captive. Underlying the coppery scent of death in the dusty earth, the acrid, unnatural chemical smell from the waterhole continued to irritate her, a subtle, discordant note that grated on her senses, an external distraction from the tumultuous internal battle. Against every primal urge etched into her very genes, Zola began to move. Slowly, her massive paws, usually so swift and silent in the hunt, now placed themselves with deliberate, agonizing caution, making almost no sound on the parched earth. It was an act of sheer, visceral will, a defiance of millennia of instinct. Quito's eyelids fluttered, a sliver of white, as he registered the giant form looming over him. He braced, expecting the killing bite, the final terrifying end. But instead, a rough, warm tongue rasped gently against his flank, then moved to his head, stroking with the same careful, meticulous tenderness Zola had lavished upon her own cubs. Quito's response was immediate and utterly unprecedented. His ragged breathing steadied almost instantly. From his small chest, a series of soft, complex vocalizations emerged, unlike any sound a typical zebra foal should make. It was a rumbling hum, almost like a lion cub's purr, deep with profound appreciation and a trust that defied all known animal behavior. This tiny, vulnerable creature had accepted her. A strange warmth, fragile yet potent, spread through Zola's chest, a counterpoint to the hollow ache of grief. It began to fill the aching void left by her cubs, stirring a dormant biological response. Her swollen mammary glands, heavy with milk for babes who would never come, responded with a sudden rush of maternal hormones, a physical manifestation of the impossible bond taking root. With impossible gentleness, Zola lowered her muzzle and gripped Quito's scruff, lifting him from the dusty ground. The foal, weak as he was, did not struggle, did not protest. His young brain, seemingly unburdened by fear, intuitively recognized the protective parent across an unbridgeable evolutionary divide. He simply hung limp, completely trusting. She carried him, cradled carefully, to a sheltered acacia grove, chosen for its dense canopy and protective thorns. With each powerful, measured step, Zola felt a new purpose rekindle within her. Her heart, once shattered, now finding a new, impossible duty, a new protector to be. Once settled, Zola guided Quito to nurse. The lioness's incredibly rich milk, designed for apex predators, thick with essential nutrients and fats, flowed into the malnourished foal. The effect was astonishing. With each swallow, Quito visibly regained strength, his trembling lessening, his eyes, previously glazed with exhaustion, beginning to clear. Quito's recovery was remarkably swift. Within hours, he was standing, albeit a little unsteadily, his eyes bright with an intelligence and alertness beyond what Zola had ever observed in a normal foal. It suggested an unusual resilience, an unexpected adaptation. And as he nuzzled into her flank, their bond deepened, becoming something profound, almost telepathic, a silent understanding passing between them. The next day, while seeking new, untouched grazing ground for Quito, Zola's nose detected the acrid chemical smell again, stronger this time. Following the scent, she uncovered a camouflaged, metallic device, partially buried near a fresh watering hole. It hummed faintly, a low, unsettling vibration against the quiet hum of the Serengeti, and smelled distinctly of that same unnatural chemical. Her instincts, sharpened by the inexplicable loss of her cubs and the sudden, impossible connection with Keto, screamed unnatural human danger. Zola carefully nudged Keto away from the glinting, humming object, her protective instincts now fully extended to this unknown human-made threat. A low rumble of warning vibrated in her chest, a sound meant to ward off danger, but also a silent instruction to Keto. Their bond deepened further in the following days. Zola meticulously groomed Keto, learning extreme gentleness for his delicate body, her claws carefully retracted, her powerful jaws softened. Keto, in turn, responded with affectionate nuzzles, rubbing his head against her powerful shoulders and emitting soft, contented sounds that echoed the purr-like vocalizations from their first meeting. Zola adapted her natural predatory routine entirely to Keto's grazing needs, always seeking lush, fresh patches of grass, moving their shelter every few days. This nomadic existence, however, felt instinctively linked to avoiding the area of the strange device, as if her subconscious was charting a course away from its unsettling presence. This metal thing, it does not belong. It smells wrong, Zola thought, her amber gaze wary, constantly scanning the horizon, always alert for any glinting object or unnatural scent on the wind. Keto looked up at her then, his soft whinny, almost a question, in his bright, intelligent eyes, as if understanding her apprehension, a shared tremor of unease passing between them. The afternoon sun baked the plains, a heavy, drowsy warmth settling over the Serengeti. Zola lay in the sparse shade of a baobab, half dozing, her senses never fully taut. Keto grazed nearby, his stripes a vibrant blur against the dry grass. A faint tremor in the earth, then the distinct rhythm of approaching hoofbeats alerted her. A small group of Thompson's gazelles, young and unaware, moved into view. Every instinct screamed, "Hunt!" Her stomach gnawed with a hollow ache. It had been over a week since she'd had a proper meal. The gazelles, delicate and quick, represented an easy, necessary opportunity. Her muscles tensed, a primal hum beginning deep in her chest, the familiar thrill of the stalk stirring. She lowered her body, preparing to vanish into the tall grasses. But as she coiled to spring, Keto, drawn by a particularly succulent patch, wandered directly into her line of sight, positioning himself between Zola and her potential prey. The gazelles froze, sensing something, but not yet seeing the lioness. Zola's body locked. The hunt instinct warred with the impossible burgeoning protectiveness. She made the agonizing choice to suppress the ancient drive. With a deep, silent sigh that ruffled her mane, she allowed the gazelles to pass, sacrificing her own dire needs for the fragile, profound trust Keto had placed in her. Keto, now significantly stronger, began to develop a truly unique and complex form of communication. He emitted soft, trilling whickers that conveyed contentment or affection, a gentle reassurance Zola felt deep within her core. But more remarkably, he produced distinct, urgent snorts for warning, which Zola, with an uncanny accuracy that defied explanation, instantly understood. A short, sharp burst meant danger close, small. A longer, agitated sequence meant human scent, moving fast. Zola learned to interpret Keto's intricate vocalizations and subtle shifts in body language, establishing a unique, silent communication system that transcended the insurmountable barrier of their species. A flick of his ear, a subtle shift in his weight, paired with a particular whinny, spoke volumes to her. Keto's natural alertness, she soon discovered, was extraordinary. His sudden, specific alerts were often Zola's first warning of danger. A rapid head turn paired with a particular, high-pitched whinny could warn her of hidden hyenas stalking through the undergrowth or the distant, almost imperceptible rumbling of human vehicles long before her own superior senses could register them. He seemed to sense danger before it was visible, an almost precognitive ability. During one of Keto's urgent, insistent warnings, a staccato sequence of snorts and stomps directed towards a distant copia, Zola noticed a small, glinting object hidden in a distant bush. It was too reflective to be natural, catching the sun in an unnatural way, and its shape eerily resembled the metallic device she had found earlier near the waterhole. A chilling sensation prickled her fur, the distinct feeling of being watched, of unseen eyes monitoring their every move. Later, they encountered other zebra herds in the distance, a thundering mass of stripes. Keto became agitated, his calls growing more complex and yearning, a primal longing for his own kind, a yearning Zola instinctively understood and felt. She kept a cautious distance, knowing that her presence would only scatter them, and that Keto, for all his unique bond with her, was still a zebra. As they continued to traverse the plains, Zola observed other animals in the vicinity of the earlier chemical odor and the hidden device. Many showed unusual lethargy, their movements slow and listless. Some exhibited disorientation, bumping into trees or wandering aimlessly. Most disturbing were the subtle deformities, a slight limp, an odd patch of missing fur, or dulled, clouded eyes. It was a disturbing pattern, an insidious, creeping threat she instinctively linked to the strange, acrid smell. Jabari's ominous scent marks, once faint, now appeared closer, fresher, sprayed with arrogant frequency on prominent rocks and trees. His presence increased the urgency of their already precarious situation, posing a direct, undeniable threat to Keto, a challenge to Zola's newfound purpose. Then the worst happened. Other lionesses from Zola's former pride, sleek and powerful, spotted them. Their amber eyes narrowed, fixed on the impossible sight of Zola and her zebra foal. Confusion warred with suspicion. Zola's mixed scent, the powerful lioness smell intertwined with the strange herbaceous scent of a herbivore, signaled her unnatural deviation, a betrayal of their kind. Zola responded instantly. With a fierce snarl, she positioned herself protectively in front of Keto, her tail lashing, ears flattened against her skull, baring her teeth. Her body language conveyed a primal threat, an unequivocal warning. She was ready for outright conflict with her own kind, risking everything to protect her adopted son. The lionesses, taken aback by her ferocity, hesitated, their curiosity warring with Zola's formidable display of maternal rage. The constant tension of being hunted by Jabari, watched by her former pride, and the unnerving, pervasive presence of the human devices began to wear on Zola. It was a relentless mental burden, a constant vigilance that left her perpetually on edge. Keto, now exhibiting playful, zebra-like behaviors, bucking playfully, nipping gently at her mane, also showed moments of unusual stillness. His gaze would often fix on distant, open areas, his ears swiveling, as if sensing unseen presences beyond Zola's more grounded perception, a silent alarm that only he could hear. These strange smells, the hidden glints, they are connected. And Keto, he sees things I cannot. Zola growled softly, a new complex intelligence dawning in her amber eyes, connecting the threads of the conspiracy through her impossible child. Keto, no longer a stumbling foal, now ran with powerful, confident strides, his black and white stripes a blur against the endless expanse of the savanna. His grazing sessions stretched longer, his independence growing with each passing day. He was sleek, strong, and fast, a magnificent young zebra. His developing self-awareness as a zebra was unmistakable, creating a subtle, internal conflict that Zola observed with a heavy heart. When other zebra herds passed in the distance, Keto would pause, his ears swiveling, a yearning whinny catching in his throat. His natural instincts pulled him strongly towards his own kind, the safety of numbers, the familiar rhythm of a herd. Yet his deep emotional bonds, forged in the crucible of loss and improbable care, kept him loyal to Zola, always returning to her side. Zola wrestled with a heartbreaking realization. True maternal love might ultimately mean letting Keto go. The thought was a raw, aching wound in her chest, a profound emptiness that threatened to engulf her again. But she saw his longing, his inherent need for what she could not provide: a herd, a mate, a future among his own. Jabari's territorial roars, once distant, now echoed nightly, closer, deeper, asserting his dominance with unsettling regularity. They were a clear signal of his inevitable discovery of Zola and Keto, a threat that Zola knew she could not indefinitely evade. His presence was a ticking clock. To compound their precarious situation, A pack of relentless wild dogs had discovered their area. With their painted coats and tireless pursuit, they showed a persistent, cunning interest in Quito, their high-pitched yelps and darting movements testing Zola's vigilance to its absolute limit. She fought them off repeatedly, her snarls tearing the air. But their persistence was a constant drain on her energy and focus. One afternoon, Quito's usual warnings took on a new urgency. A series of insistent, specific whinnies, paired with a prolonged, unwavering gaze toward a particularly dense thicket, spurred Zola to action. She decided then and there to actively investigate the mysterious devices that had been a silent menace for weeks. Waiting until Quito was engrossed in grazing a short distance away, Zola cautiously approached the hidden spot. The faint, acrid chemical scent was strong here. Using her immense strength, she carefully dislodged a part of the camouflage device, tearing away the deceptive foliage. Beneath, complex wiring was revealed, snaking around a small, circular panel from which a pulsing blue light emitted a silent, cold glow. This was no simple snare or crude poacher's trap. This was advanced technology, alien and dangerous. As Zola leaned in, sniffing the strange components, Quito, sensing her intense focus, subtly nudged her front leg with his nose. He then flicked his head towards a nearby, almost invisible tripwire, barely a thread, stretched taut across a narrow game trail. He looked at her expectantly, his intelligent eyes wide. It was an undeniable act of intentional warning and strategic guidance, far beyond any typical animal instinct, a deliberate communication. Zola realized then these devices were connected, forming a sinister network. Following Quito's cues, distinct head movements and indicating direction, specific patches of earth he would sniff intently, she discovered several more devices. Each was cleverly concealed, and each emitted a faint, high-frequency hum, a sound Zola could barely perceive, but which Quito clearly registered, often twitching his ears in response. Near one of these newer devices, she found small, discarded containers. They were metallic, branded with unidentifiable symbols, and contained residual traces of the acrid chemical. These were not the crude trappings of local poachers. These hinted at industrial or scientific origins, something far more organized and chilling. The chemical smell here was stronger, almost stinging her nostrils. Quito, observing Zola's careful investigation, began to mimic her cautious movements. He would approach the devices with a measured tread, even sniffing the branded containers, displaying a level of understanding and concern far beyond his years. He was effectively acting as an intelligent partner in this grim discovery, his youthful innocence giving way to a shared adult burden. The internal turmoil within Zola intensified. She now understood she had to protect Quito not just from natural predators, or even the immediate threat of Jabari, but from this unseen advanced human threat. This made his eventual departure, his journey to freedom, even more critical, and paradoxically, even more painful. As they moved through the network's radius, Zola observed a disturbing pattern in other animals. A springbok wandered aimlessly, its eyes glazed. A baboon troop was unnaturally docile, its usual boisterous energy replaced by a listless quiet. She saw subtle deformities, patches of dull fur, or limps where none should be. It confirmed her fears about unknown contamination or insidious influence. The threat of hidden human forces became palpable. Zola felt a presence, a watchful eye, far more organized and sinister than simple poachers. It was a cold, calculating vigilance that raised the hairs on her neck, a constant, unsettling sensation of being observed. They watch. They tamper. This is not nature. Quito must be free, Zola rumbled, the words a silent vow. Her gaze hardened with a fierce, protective resolve, the confrontation she knew was inevitable beginning to coalesce in her mind. Hey everyone, if you're gripping your seats after that last part, you're not alone. The conspiracy is tightening. Zola's bond with Quito is deeper than ever, and now everything is about to change. You absolutely do not want to miss what happens next. The stakes have never been higher, and the danger is immediate and life-threatening. Make sure you hit that like button, share this video with everyone you know, and subscribe so you don't miss a single crucial detail of Zola and Quito's incredible journey. Trust me, it only gets more intense from here. The earth began to tremble, a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through Zola's very bones. A massive dust cloud swirling like an ochre storm billowed on the horizon, rapidly approaching. Then, through the haze, the source emerged. A colossal zebra herd, nearly 200 strong, thundering directly towards Zola and Keto's location. Keto's entire demeanor transformed. His head lifted high, ears pitched sharply forward, twitching with intense focus. From his throat, he emitted a series of sophisticated, excited whinnies, unlike anything Zola had ever heard from him, complex and yearning. His deepest instincts, dormant for so long, were now pulling him powerfully and unequivocally to his own kind. Zola's heart constricted with an overwhelming, familiar pain, a sharp pang that echoed her earlier loss. She was torn between the primal urge to hold on to him, to keep him safe beside her, and the profound, agonizing realization of the rightness of his innate need for his true family, his species. She followed Keto as he galloped towards the approaching herd, every maternal instinct screaming at her to stop him, to guide him back to the perceived safety of her protection. But a deeper, selfless love understood that this moment of ultimate freedom, of belonging, was always inevitable for him. A magnificent lid stallion, his mane bristling, stepped forward from the thundering mass, his posture aggressive, confused by the impossible sight of a lioness and a zebra foal interacting. But Keto's urgent, welcoming calls, full of a strange reassurance, seemed to disarm the stallion's aggression, replacing it with cautious curiosity. Several mares, their stripes a mesmerizing blur, approached cautiously, drawn by Keto's persistent, almost desperate calls. One, a young female whose ribs showed the recent loss of her own foal, pushed forward, her muzzle reaching Keto. She began to groom him with a gentle, species-specific care, a nuzzling and rubbing that Zola, for all her love, could never truly provide. It was then that Zola felt a profound shift within herself. True maternal love, she finally understood, meant knowing when to let go. Slowly, deliberately, she began backing away from the herd, from Keto, giving him the ultimate choice, the freedom he deserved. Keto noticed her withdrawal immediately. His head swung frantically, his gaze darting between Zola, his savior, his impossible mother, and the zebras, his future, his family. His small body trembled with the weight of an impossible decision, caught between two worlds. He moved towards Zola, not with the excited energy he had shown the zebras, but with slow, deliberate steps. He pressed his striped face against her powerful neck in a profound, species-transcending gesture of pure, heartbreaking affection, a final, silent goodbye. Zola groomed him one last time, her rough tongue working carefully through his mane, her senses memorizing every detail of his scent, his warmth, his presence. Keto looked into her amber eyes, a gaze filled with gratitude, love, and a heartbreaking understanding. Then, with a final soft whinny that sounded remarkably like Mother in the Wind, he turned and bounded back towards the herd, disappearing into the sea of stripes. As Zola backed further away, her heightened senses, sharpened by a lifetime of survival and Keto's profound influence, picked up subtle movement in a distant rock formation. Following a clue Keto had given her earlier, a persistent, focused stare towards a specific clump of rocks, a detail she now understood as a warning, she discovered a cleverly camouflaged human observation post, hidden in plain sight amidst the boulders. She saw a human figure inside, hunched over equipment, observing the herd through a powerful lens. And crucially, Zola saw the human logging data on Keto's integration into the herd, with symbols and logos that matched the branded containers she had found near the devices. This was no coincidence. A guttural warning roar tore from Zola's chest, directed not at prey, but at the concealed human, a sound of pure, unadulterated fury and betrayal. The figure inside the post startled violently, knocking over equipment as they scrambled to quickly shut down their monitors and escape. In their panic and flight, the human dropped a small, branded data device. As they vanished over the rocks, Zola approached, her eyes fixed on the fallen object. The small screen, cracked but still partially lit, displayed classified information about biomonitoring and environmental adaptation studies on key species, including zebras. The corporate logo etched faintly on the device's casing was the same one Zola had glimpsed on the containers, confirming her darkest fears. Zola, now fueled by a fierce, protective rage for the entire Serengeti, for the very essence of nature itself, picked up the data device in her powerful jaws. Her profound, impossible intelligence recognized it as the key, the undeniable proof, to understanding the full extent of the human encroachment in its hidden, sinister agenda. Zola stood motionless, a solitary figure on the vast plain, as Kato's striped form dissolved into the protective, thundering mass of the zebra herd. Her heart, though no longer pierced by the sharp agony of loss, felt profoundly empty. Yet a new bittersweet wisdom settled within her, the profound, selfless understanding of true maternal love, a love that knew when to release its hold. Clutching the branded data device carefully in her powerful jaws, Zola began the long walk back towards her original territory. With each powerful stride, she carried not just the knowledge of what it truly meant to be a mother, but also the heavy weight of the insidious human secret she now possessed. The Serengeti was hers to protect, and the threat was real. In the weeks that followed, Zola occasionally caught sight of the distant zebra herd. Her keen eyes would sometimes pick out Kato's distinctive markings, a flash of familiar stripes. Seeing him thriving, strong, and confident among his own kind, a part of the vibrant, living tapestry of the savannah. And Quito, on several occasions, would lift his head from grazing, his ears swiveling, and call out in Zola's direction. It was a unique, affectionate whinny, a complex sequence of sounds understood only by her. It was a silent, powerful message across species, a declaration of enduring love and gratitude that his herd mates, grazing nearby, did not comprehend. Zola's maternal instincts were fundamentally altered by her impossible bond. She now displayed an unusual tolerance and almost strategic protection for other vulnerable young animals. A lost gazelle fawn, a confused wildebeest calf, she would subtly guide them away from specific danger zones she now recognized as human-influenced, using her bulk to block pathways leading towards the contaminated areas or the humming devices. Now guided by the classified data device she carried, an object she instinctively understood held critical information, and her expanded awareness, Zola actively sought out more of the hidden human installations. She moved with purpose, a silent force of nature bent on disruption. She systematically disrupted their operations, using her immense strength to damage equipment, tearing down camouflage surveillance posts with ferocious efficiency. She exposed their presence to other, more aggressive predators, leading hyena clans or wild dog packs towards the scent of human activity, turning the Serengeti itself against the intruders. The humans' careful networks of observation and influence began to unravel under her relentless, targeted attacks. In a tense final confrontation, Zola faced a larger human patrol. They were armed, determined to recover the lost data device, their faces grim with a mix of fear and frustration. Zola used every ounce of her predatory prowess, her intimate knowledge of the terrain, and the element of surprise. She stalked them from the tall grass, a golden phantom, then erupted from cover with a thunderous roar. It was a challenge that shook the very ground, a visceral display of power that staked her claim as the undeniable guardian of the wild. The humans, terrified, fired warning shots into the air. But her ferocity, her single-minded determination, was too much. Baffled and intimidated by the unnatural intelligence and the targeted, relentless attacks of the lioness, the humans retreated permanently. They abandoned their more insidious operations in that sector of the Serengeti, their covert studies brought to an abrupt halt by an enraged lioness. Years later, wildlife researchers, observing Zola's unusually tolerant behavior, her strategic movements, and the sudden, inexplicable abandonment of advanced technologies in certain areas, began to document her extraordinary story. They struggled to explain the biological and behavioral mechanisms, the impossibility of her actions, a riddle that defied their scientific understanding. Zola became a legendary figure in the Serengeti, a bridge between species, a guardian whose expanded consciousness of the land and its unseen human-made threats made her truly unique, an intelligence beyond scientific explanation. Quito, now a majestic adult stallion, displayed an unusually calm and discerning nature. He often acted as a silent sentinel for his herd, sometimes leading them away from areas of subtle human encroachment that his herd mates, less perceptive, would have blindly passed. He carried the indelible memory of Zola's love, a foundation that influenced his interactions with the world, making him an exceptionally empathetic and subtly watchful leader within his own species. Their impossible bond taught the world that love transcends species, rewriting nature's rules and revealing hidden depths of courage and sacrifice that defy scientific understanding. Zola's story became a testament to the idea that in a world often defined by division and conflict, the simple act of one being caring for another can transform the world, exposing hidden dangers and fostering unexpected, almost telepathic alliances across all living beings. Her legacy, woven into the fabric of the Serengeti, was a silent, enduring roar of protection,